Wow! I'm not gonna lie. I did not expect this run to be what it is. I actually thought this run was gonna be just as bad, if not worse, than the Zeb Wells run. But this amazing Spider-Man run, it's much better than the last one. Like, it's not even comparable, but I'm gonna be comparing them a lot in this video because I promised you all, at issue 10 of Amazing Spider-Man, I would review The Amazing Spider-Man by Joe Kelly for what it is so far. My early impressions? I'm actually impressed. I can't lie. And I shouldn't be so shocked that I liked it, because I actually did like a good amount of Spider-Man and Deadpool, and Joe Kelly wrote that. But even that said, anything that with Amazing Spider-Man Office usually is terrible. The Office, the editorial staff, to our knowledge and what we've been led to believe so far throughout the time period we've been living on this earth, is that the current Spider-Man editorial staff just cannot let a writer write a good run. They will do whatever they can to meddle with it. They will get involved and get their grimy, grubby little hands all over it. But this run, it only has very little, to my knowledge, from what I could tell, interference from the editorial. And it may not even be. Maybe this is what Joe Kelly wanted. So honestly, I gotta give credit. This run feels like it does something different from the last run in a great big way. Now, I'm about to jump into this review, but I'm gonna ask all you guys before I do. Let me know down below. I'm rhyming like it's crazy. Oh my God, that was 2 back-to-back. Anyways, let me know down below what you would think of this run so far. Issues 1 through 10, what is your opinion on these issues? And while you are typing that down below, while you are giving me your opinions, allow me to just jump right into this video for you real quick, okay? So the first thing I gotta talk about when we're reviewing this has gotta be the absolute best part about the entirety of this run so far, and it's easily by far the artwork by Pepe Larraz. This is some of the best artwork I've ever seen in a comic book, literally ever, let alone a Spider-Man comic book, literally ever. You guys have to see this way he does his work. You guys gotta see it. And the colorist for this run as well, whoever works with Pepe Larraz, just does phenomenal work too. You can see the depth in like the person's face when they're drawn. You see so much like shadows, and it's really complementing the artwork in such a great, fantastic way. It's not like the usual box image in all 6 boxes on a text page. No, you get massive artwork for an entire page. You get it split in half. Pepe Larraz, man. This guy is phenomenal. I don't know if I've ever really seen much of his work before this, but I have to say I have been blessed to see his work. And you could honestly even make the argument that his work on this run is what is solely pushing me so much to like it. That is a very fair claim. I wouldn't hate on that, because I'm actually a strong believer that artwork is really, to me, maybe this is just my opinion, but the artwork I find more valuable than the writing itself. That's just me. You don't have to agree with me. I'm sure most of you won't. But when I read a great comic book, right? When I read it and I'm like, wow, this writing is just superb. That's usually what I think, right? I'm just like, this writing is superb. And that's really the extent as it goes. Like, it's groundbreaking stuff. This is crazy. This is cool. When I see artwork like Pepe Larraz's artwork, it's quite literally like, I can't fathom a human being like this has this much talent. Like, I don't know why for me, I guess because you could visibly see the talent on the page versus writing. It's all, you know, up to your discretion. And like, we all know how to write, but you don't truly know how bad of a writer you are until you start writing. We all know how bad of artists we are. So maybe that's also a reason. I can really identify how bad of an artist I am and just how much better than me Pepe Larraz is. But nevertheless, that is easily by far and away the best part of the entire run. The artwork is stupendous whenever Pepe Larraz is on. JR is actually also on the run himself. He was in the last run too. And I'm not gonna lie, I still don't really like his artwork. When I was younger, I really did like it. I liked it in the Avengers vs. X-Men, and he was also in Spider-Man 2 when I was younger. But the stuff nowadays, especially from the Zeb Wells run, I didn't really like. I thought it was kind of meh. Just really wasn't for me. JR is a legend, so I'm not trying to disrespect him, but man, it hurt to look at the Zeb Wells run in large parts. But I will say it feels like he stepped his game up for this run. Maybe I'm just biased because I'm seeing like it's such a better writing in this run than the last one as well. But I do think the artwork in this run is better too, especially from JR. Like, I think even himself is better. Let's talk about Spider-Man, because for a big point of contention for me in a lot of these comic book runs that are created as of late is how Spider-Man is done. Is Spider-Man done in the mythos of 616 that we grew up loving, or is Spider-Man done under the current editorial's guise of what they think Spider-Man should be? And to me, I actually think a lot of what this Spider-Man has is some classic Spider-Man to him. This Spider-Man is very competent instead of just being a big old wet noodle wimp. He does lose, but he doesn't lose every single fight like he did in the last run. And when he does lose in this run, he is doing a great job showing why he may have won the bout. Like when he fights Hellgate, he's thinking of all these plots, all these plans to stop him. He's using his web bomb-bombs. He's freezing them with nitrogen. He's planning out ways to get Hellgate away from the civilians. These are all great battle IQ moments for Spider-Man in this run, and I felt like none of these existed in the last run. He lost damn near every single fight he was in the last run. And not just every single fight against newcomers, he lost every single fight against anybody. Whereas in this run, you'll find Spider-Man fights like Rhino and Shocker, and he beats them both because these are longtime Spider-Man villains, 50-year plus on both of these guys. He shouldn't have too much of a trouble with them, right? But in Zeb Wells' Spider-Man, for some reason, Spider-Man can't even beat the fucking Vulture. Vulture's beating Spider-Man in Zeb Wells' Spider-Man run. That doesn't make any sense to me. So I gotta stay for starters alone. Not only is Spider-Man written more competent, but he doesn't lose every fight, and when he does lose, he's showing his genius while he's doing it. The last run just had Spider-Man losing every fight. He needed to be saved countless times again and again and again. It just didn't really feel like I was watching or reading a superhero story. It just felt like I was like reading a story where the main character sucked. But Kelly's Spider-Man is different. Not only does he win fights, he's smart too, he's heroic, but another thing I haven't talked about is the detective work he did. Spider-Man has been a detective multiple times in the first 10 issues of this run. I don't think Spider-Man did any detective work even once in Zeb Wells' run. But there's more than that. There's more than just being a detective. Like, he was able to identify how the Rhino ingested the drugs. Like, he's actually showing his genius as well. I think Joe Kelly really does a phenomenal job at showing Spider-Man not just be a loser wimp who loses fights. Like, he's a superhero at the end of the day. I'm so grateful that this run isn't like Zeb Wells' run, which was misery porn in my opinion. So far in Joe Kelly's Spider-Man, Spider-Man enjoys what he does. He wants to save people. He cares for others. It feels like I'm actually reading a Spider-Man story to an extent. But we gotta talk about Peter Parker too. Now, the Peter aspects of this run are a bit iffy. They're not nearly as strong as the Spider-Man aspects, but they're not terrible like the last run either. We'll start with the two bad things, and I think the two bad things I'm not the biggest fan of are Peter's romance life and the flashbacks that constantly happen throughout the run. Now, the flashbacks that happen throughout the run, they show Peter as a kid, and they show like his memories. I think it's a pretty good usage of flashbacks to help make characters like Uncle Ben still feel important to the story even decades later after their purpose was really served. But a lot of these memories are not really what I would like to see Peter doing, you know? They had like Peter drinking. They had like Peter telling Uncle Ben and Aunt May, "You're not my parents, I'm glad you're not my parents." And at first I was like, this kid's a little shithead. Like, yeah, it's better than him being a wet noodle, but this is still bad. Like, there's a middle ground there. Spider-Man's fiery, he's angry, but he shouldn't be telling his surrogate parents that he's grateful that they're not his actual parents. That's brutal. That's just brutal, right? But then you find out that Spider-Man was actually drugged. Yes, he was higher than a kite. He was drugged, and because of this, he is actually not a reliable narrator. He's a very unreliable narrator, and a lot of these memories you could just chalk up to Peter not actually remembering correctly. He even states this within panel in the run. So honestly, I don't really have a gripe with any of these. I really don't care too much that Peter was shown drinking, or Peter was backsassing his Aunt May, Peter's running off, Peter's being a dick to Uncle Ben. None of this stuff really bothers me because I'm gonna just say it didn't happen. You know, there's obviously points in this run where the memories are way more clear, times when Peter Parker isn't high as hell, but those memories are portraying Peter not being a complete and utter shithead. So I can vibe with those. The real only problem I have with the memories though, because I wouldn't bring this up if I had no gripes with them at all, is just that I feel like they do them a lot, a bit too much. Overall, I think it's a good addition to the story. I just don't personally care to see it this often. Like, I don't need to see a flashback in every single book, let alone like multiple times in one book. Maybe if one book had like 2 or 3 and then they did a flashback for a couple books, I'd be cool with it. But I'm saying you got like some of these books where Peter's living in these flashbacks. And to me, I just don't really care to really like flashback that much. But the other real issue I have with this run, like I just aforementioned, as I previously stated, is Peter's relationships. I think Peter's relationships have just sucked. They've sucked for the greater part of 2 decades now almost. The only good part about this entirety of like these 20 years, a little less than that, was when Nick Spencer was writing Peter Parker's Spider-Man with Mary Jane. Outside of that, I just can't stand any of the relationships from like any of them. Way back when with like even Carly Cooper, I couldn't understand. But let's focus on these, right? For starters, let's talk about Shay. Shay. Now I actually remember her name, well, mostly because I have it written down. But I don't care for this character. I really don't. I think she's lame. I think she's stupid. And I just don't like her, not gonna lie. I think she's a nothing burger of a character. I can't stand the fact that, like, Peter and her don't have any actual understanding of what even they are. Peter thinks that, like, they're dating, so he doesn't want to be with anybody else, yet he's still making out with Black Cat. And then come later, Shay's like, we're not actually exclusive. I'm going on a date with somebody else tonight. So then Peter's like, oh, I thought we were exclusive. It's like, oh, you thought you were exclusive with her, but you were cheating on her? So you're going to just say Peter Parker's a cheater. Okay. So that's, again, I don't really like that about Shay or for Shay. If we're just going to say this about her, you know, if that's all she's going to be is a nothing burger. Then you also find out later on she's probably the other person she goes out on a date with is Randy Robertson, who is one of Peter's best friends. We don't know for sure if this is the date she was talking about because it's weeks later when we see the two of them together. But they are together. They're hanging out, walking down the street, coffee clutching, chatting it up with one another. So I'm over here led to believe that these two were on a date with each other. So it's pretty brutal that she would date Peter's very good friend, in my opinion at least. But Shay does have one redeeming quality, at least in the entire run so far that we've seen, and that I don't even know if it's a redeeming quality, but I just like that she works at Ravencroft. It allows us to get more time at Ravencroft. It gives us excuses to put Spider-Man back at Ravencroft, and the way that Pepe Larraz draws Ravencroft in this run is a fucking 10 out of 10. So I hope we get more Spider-Man at Ravencroft. I just hope we don't have to keep the Shay connection alive for us to get it, because I don't really care about Shay as a character. They could kill her off and I wouldn't bat an eye. But the other relationship status within this run is Black Cat. And Black Cat is actually kind of a different story. I personally love Black Cat. Black Cat's one of my all-time favorite Spider-Man characters ever. I just don't like her with Peter Parker that much. We've seen numerous times in the past, in like the 80s, and I want to say late 70s, but I'm pretty sure it's just the 80s, where Peter Parker and Black Cat, or Felicia, try and make it work. They try and date. They try and be partners, but they just can't. Whether it be because Peter's so busy, whether it be because Black Cat's, not willing to stop stealing, whether it be because Peter has other interests in other people, whether it is because any of these reasons, they didn't work. The most recent reason they gave us is that Black Cat was just kind of bored with how good things were. So she breaks up with Peter Parker in the Zeb Wells run. God, I have no reason to see these two together anymore. I have no desire to see these two together anymore. How I look at Black Cat is actually how I feel like a lot of casual fans will look at Mary Jane. So for me, Black Cat, it's just like, can we stop having her with Peter? Can we just have Black Cat stories? Can Black Cat go and find another partner? I don't even need her with a partner. I actually just like Black Cat more than enough on her own. I like her doing her own story, her own shebayas. So to me, I just don't understand why they keep needing to pair her up with Peter Parker. I just don't get it. I personally don't agree with it because they've tried numerous times. They even tried literally less than 3 years ago and broke them up just because they could. So why are we trying this anymore? Realistically, Black Cat and Spider-Man should just be superhero friends or superhero teammates and partners, and they could just be real friends in real life. They don't need to be dating. They just don't. They could be amicable. They've been amicable probably for the majority of their time together. And then lastly, Mary Jane also shows up in this run, and to me this part really feels very contrived. Peter is taking a break from being Spider-Man after he gets the brakes beaten off of him, and nobody can really get in contact with him. He's acting more reclusive than ever before. So who shows up at his apartment? Mary Jane, at the behest of Aunt May, goes there to check in on Peter Parker and make sure he's doing all right. Peter is pretty cold throughout the entire conversation, but then Mary Jane is just like bringing up that she is Venom. That felt super contrived. That doesn't even feel like it belongs in this conversation. Why did she say that? And then Peter says something so cringy about how he thought they were going to try and get back together. This entire part was ass. It was just straight ass. Again, if it isn't Nick Spencer writing Mary Jane with Peter, it just feels like the writer since Brand New Day cannot do it. They just can't do it. I actually still have faith in Joe Kelly, though. I believe Joe Kelly can do it. Amazing Spider-Man issue 1000 is coming up, so I really am praying on everything that Peter Parker and Mary Jane are back together by then. But, I mean, this is our best hope. I've seen a lot of the Brand New Day era writers, and I just don't think any of them have it in them. And I think Joe Kelly might. I'm going to give him some credence. I'm going to give him some... I believe issue 1000, we get it. But either way, there is one thing that's certain that I do like about Peter Parker in this run. I love the fact that he's a scientist. I just love it so much. I think that a lot of times you'll see Peter Parker characterized as a teacher, and I just think this is way off the basis. If you know anything about being a teacher, you know that you need required to be punctual damn near every single day of the year. Teachers get days off, sure, but they have to accumulate them, and they roll over between years, and you have to save them up. If Peter Parker's going to take off of work every other day, it'll never work. You need to be there for those kids. You are literally not only, teaching these kids. You're responsible for them to an extent, right? You're watching over them for hours throughout the day. Peter Parker just does not have the time and the capacity to be watching over these kids, especially as Spider-Man. So that is why I actually think making him a scientist is the better play. I just think it makes more sense. Peter's already an inventor. He made his own web shooters, and these things are pretty damn hard to make, and he made them like 60 years ago. So I think it makes way more sense that you could be a scientist than a teacher. Look at it like this. If you're a teacher, you're supposed to be there 180 days out of 365 days. So damn near half the year you're supposed to be there, right? If you're a scientist and you're really that smart, you really only got to be there when you're inventing something, right? And once you make the company a boatload of money, they're going to get off your back again. And you can do whatever you want again, which is essentially the premise they're going for here. I like it. I love it. Scientist Peter Parker, in my opinion, is better than teacher Peter Parker. And I think Joe Kelly got it right there. There's a few villains in this run. Some classic, some new, and then some less classic that return. And I honestly have to say there's not a single villain in this run I don't like. We'll talk about the most controversial in Itsy Bitsy. I've made some choice statements about some of the scenes from issue 3 with Itsy Bitsy in the past, but I made these statements without context. I didn't realize what was going on. I didn't realize they were giving her character more depth. I just thought this scene was weird where she's like making out with him and he's clearly concussed and she like kidnapped him. But after reading it in the context, I don't hate it. I still think it's fucking weird as hell, don't get me wrong. But I understand they're trying to do more with her character. They're trying to make her less of just a slashy, just kill anything in sight kind of character and give her some personality, give her some depth. And honestly, I can work with that. I just recently made a video talking about Doppelganger and how he deserves to have some more depth. I can't honestly, in good conscience, hate on the fact that Itsy Bitsy's getting more depth just because I don't like how they're giving her the depth. That's not really fair. At the end of the day, I'm happy they're giving her more depth. But you also have plenty of other characters that show up in this run that you all know already. Like Rhino shows up, Shocker shows up, and Tombstone shows up. All of them done well. Like Rhino looks like his great classic self. Tombstone's not super duper overpowered, beating the brakes off of Spider-Man at every turn. And then like Shocker has this ugly outfit he's wearing now. But outside of that, I think Shocker's even done well in this run too. He's even a little bit more formidable than he usually is shown to be. I think Joe Kelly also did a solid job making the characters like Myra and Brian. I think these are both very interesting characters. You know, making Brian a part of Peter Parker's like childhood. And, you know, he's trying to help Peter for the things Peter did for him when they were younger. And, you know, they're trying to look out for each other. I think that's sweet. But I also think he has, like, some badness to him, too. Like, he's a womanizer. He's not the greatest person in that sense. And he just overlooks Peter's flaws without question. So I think all of that put together could lead to some interesting storytelling down the line. You look at Myra, who's actually Peter's boss. And I think she even has more interesting storytelling. Like when Hobgoblin attacks her building of work and she's texting her stepchild about it. She's like, Hobgoblin attack or something like that. And then you know what the stepchild's name in her phone? Step Spawn. So this tells me that there's a little bit more to her than we get to see. And then we also know, according to Brian, that she steps out of the office all the time, whether it be for paid time off or she just can't be there currently. And we have no idea why. So I think there's some great storytelling coming in the future with her. There's a lot to unravel and unfold with her. But the last thing we're going to talk about in this video has to be the end of issue 10. Now, if you haven't read issue 10, you should read issue 10 if you're going to watch the rest of this video, because I'm just going to talk about it. Super spoilery. I mean, this whole video's been spoilery. So if you made it this far without getting spoiled, I'm honestly just impressed, or I feel like you're just not listening to me. But just to continue to finish this off, the final page ends with Peter Parker and Spider-Man running into each other. Huh? This hasn't happened since the Spencer's run when the two of them separated. But that is not the case this time. We are led to believe that these two are two actual people from the Marvel Universe instead of just being Peter Parker and then like split personality Spider-Man. Now, I think it's pretty obvious that this is going to be Ben Reilly as Peter Parker and then Kane Parker as Spider-Man. I think this is super obvious, and I think it needs to happen because there's two other things I've heard, and if it's one of these, I'll lose my mind. If it's the other one, it just doesn't make sense to me. But like we see Spider-Man being brutal, being vicious, just beating people down. He's hurting bad guys. He's not just putting them in jail. That's not something Peter usually does. That is definitely something Kane would do, though. Kane's a bit aggressive. We also see Ben Reilly being a bit standoffish, or I mean, we should say Peter Parker. But we also see Peter Parker being very standoffish and rude and curt to the people around him while he's meeting with them in person. Like he even tells Norman Osborn himself to his face, quote unquote, "Stop interrupting me when I'm at work." That's not something Spider-Man was doing the earlier part of this run. Like, that's something I also didn't like about this run, just to throw that in there real quick. I actually can't stand how Norman Osborn's like a good guy now. That's terrible. Right alongside of the Spider-Man romances, I think this is probably the worst part of the entire run. Spider-Man and Norman Osborn working together, I hate it. He killed his clone. He killed his daughter. At one point, he killed Aunt May. Like, I hate all of this. So, to me, this is just really stupid that they're trying to, like, glorify him and take him out of the villain role. I mean, we all know he's going to end up back there anyways in the long run, but either way, I don't like Norman Osborn working with Spider-Man. In a short interim, maybe it's fine, but this is going on too long. We're on 2 runs and it's still continuing. Get the fuck out of here. But with that being said, the people who theorize Spider-Man might not be Kane theorized that he could be Norman Osborn. And oh my God, I would lose my mind if they made Norman Osborn Spider-Man. God, we would lose. We would just lose. We would lose so big. People would never shut the fuck up about it, bro. That's probably the worst part about having to hear bad writing or read bad writing is when all the fans who don't actually read a lot of comics, they cite the bad writing as moments in comics for good writing or just writing in general. And it's like, no, everybody who actually reads comics fucking hated that. So please pick up more comics and just learn that this is not how it's supposed to be. So I pray on everything that Norman Osborn doesn't become Spider-Man because it's just going to lead us down a whole rabbit hole in the future with the fandom that's going to suck. And then the other option was Hobie Brown. I think Hobie Brown would actually be sick. To my knowledge, he's actually the first person to ever don the Spider-Man costume besides Peter Parker because he's trying to help out Spider-Man to get people off of his back. I think it'd be really cool if Hobie was Spider-Man again. It comes full circle from the very beginning. We haven't seen Hobie Brown in quite a bit, actually. At least 616 is Hobie Brown. We saw him in Miles Morales as Spider-Man, talked to him briefly, but that's it. I just don't think it would be him, though, because he's not this violent. He's not a violent person. He's not this aggressive. Kane is a significantly more aggressive and violent person, and Norman Osborn, to an extent, is definitely more aggressive and violent than freaking Hobie Brown is. Hobie Brown's a good, nice guy. So I'm praying it's not Norman Osborn. I'm praying it's just Kane. I'd be okay if it was Hobie Brown. It just wouldn't make sense in my opinion. And then Ben Reilly, to me, clearly seems like he's Peter Parker. But maybe I'm wrong, and Peter Parker's Kane and Ben Reilly was Spider-Man. What do you guys think? I'd love to know down below if you guys want to let me know. Comment who you think is who and who's what. But overall, all in all, I gotta say this run is better than I thought it would be. I'm not saying it's perfect or even great by any means, but it's a solid, okay Spider-Man run up to this point. A lot of the artwork is otherworldly. JRJR's artwork isn't the greatest, but it's still solid at times. You got Spider-Man actually using his brain. He's actually fighting. He's using his noggin. He actually feels like a real character. There's some great new additions to the freaking scene already. I actually didn't even hate Hellgate by any means. I thought he was pretty solid and cool too. So all in all, overall, I gotta say, at this point, I was wrong about this run. Outside of Mary Jane being written horrifically when she does show up, though, she's terrible, and the romance aspect of Spider-Man is still, in fact, terrible, and Norman Osborn being there is still terrible. Outside of these 3 things, everything else wrong with Spider-Man I've recently had, everything I've hated about it, I think they're trying to rectify it, and I gotta give them credit. I would be in bad faith saying, this is trash, because I don't think it's trash. I think the artwork is a 50,000 out of 10. I think the writing is pretty okay-ish to good. I think that how they're portraying Spider-Man, I love. I even think the flashbacks, to an extent, are great storytelling. I love the storytelling devices they use. Honestly, I think it's a really solid run. As of now, I'm impressed. Not impressed because it's good. Impressed just because it's so much better than Zeb Wells' run. I honestly was sitting here thinking, man, I guess Nick Spencer was the only person who could really defy editorial like that, because Zeb Wells' run really had me thinking that Spider-Man was going to just be written like a bitch for the rest of my life. Grateful I was wrong. Joe Kelly's actually writing Spider-Man and not be a complete and utter loser, and I got to give him credit for that. But again, what do you guys think? Let me know down below how you felt about the current Amazing Spider-Man run. We're 10 issues deep. I just want to know your opinion. At the end of the day, I'm going to tentatively keep reading along. And when this run is officially, fully, completely over, I will make a full-fledged video, similarly how I did to Zeb Wells' run, discussing the entirety of it, the goods, the bads, and the ugly. But until then, y'all stay safe, y'all stay cool, and stay fresh, everybody. I don't really have anything else for you in this video. I've never ended my videos like this before, but it's gonna end like this today. Dunk out. Peace!